Imagine a remote stretch of jungle in southern Central America. Centuries ago, a great empire flourished here, carving giant stone heads hundreds of tons heavy, building plazas, and commanding trade routes. They know without warning if the city was abandoned. No battle scars, no dying population frozen in time, no grand assault. The forest simply reclaimed the plaza, the carvings sunk into moss, and the empire faded from memory. What happened? How could a civilization of that size vanish so completely? Today we step into the shadows of time and explore the mysterious disappearance of a great society, its rise, its pinnacle, and its sudden failure through the lens of myth, archaeology and the jungle's quiet whispers. Close your eyes and feel the humid air, the steady rhythm of cicadas, the vine-entangled stone steps rising into the canopy. We walk now into the world of the Maya civilization's lesser-known outpost of Copán in modern Honduras. But we won't linger only there, we'll travel the wider timeline, from the golden era of the Maya to the shrouded decline, leaving behind clues that invite speculation, awe and respect. Long before Europeans ever sailed the Caribbean, the Maya had already built great cities, Tikal, Palenque, Uxmal. At their height, around AD 600–900, they were masters of astronomy, architecture and urban planning. The plaza floor at Copán bears stele carved with precision, the hieroglyphs still standing despite centuries of weather and neglect. We feel that weight of history beneath our feet. But then, something changes. Around at 830–900 many of the major southern lowland cities are abandoned or begin decline. The monuments at Copán and stop. The population shrinks, and in a remarkably short period, by one estimate just a few decades, as if the great plazas are overgrown. Scholars call this the classic Maya collapse. What led to it? Scholars point to several contributing factors: environmental degradation, deforestation, soil exhaustion, prolonged droughts, political upheaval, perhaps internal revolt. Some even suggest trade networks shifted away, or that disease and famine took a coordinated toll. One dramatic clue lies in the tree rings from the region. They show prolonged drought in the late 9th century. One after another, kings stop erecting monuments. The narrative in stone halts. The city remains, but the story ends. Let's pause on Copán. The site shows signs of last-minute efforts, and new walls hastily built, older ones patched, inscriptions that apparently stop mid-thought. Some plazas show fill dumped over them, perhaps in a hurry or in preparation for abandonment, and then silence. But abandonment does not always mean complete disappearance. In highland Maya regions, people remained, but the cities changed character. Yet for the southern lowlands, the big centers were deserted. What fascinated me while researching is how little direct evidence we have of warfare obliterating the cities. It's not like Pompeii or Pompeii-style cataclysm, it's more like a gradual fade, albeit in geological time still rapid. Imagine you're a resident of Copán in AD 879, rain has not come for years, your corn harvest is failing, your rulers cannot deliver. You see your neighbor trade routes get dry. There is panic. Maybe your elite begin migrating, leaving the city open to jungle. You pack your belongings, leave your home, walk out into the forest. Maybe you don't even know you're leaving permanently, just trying to survive. And so thousands of people walk away. The plaza's empty. Animals return. The vines reclaim. Over centuries, the stones darken, until someone stumbles into the jungle and finds the ruins. Half covered but still proud. What remains of Copán speaks to this story. The hieroglyphic stairway records hundreds of years of kings. The ball court echoes the sound of ancient leather balls. The great plaza still shows columns, each telling a story, but after a certain date, the story ends. The flowers bloom, the tourists walk the paths, the silence of the jungle encroaches. Why does this matter? Because the lesson echoes today. Complex societies depend on environment, trade, leadership, and resilience. The Maya collapse invites reflection on sustainability, climate, and human agency. It reminds us of impermanence. Let's now dive into one fascinating feature, the hieroglyphic stairway at Copán. 115 steps, each carved with hieroglyphs telling the story of the kings and their rituals. It's the longest known Mayan text, a majority of which was carved in the late 8th century. Then it stops. The last inscriptions hint at the final rulers and then nothing. That abrupt ending is haunting. Why did the inscriptions stop? Because production of monuments ceases. Because resources are gone. Because the elite class collapses. It seems the system ceases to reproduce itself. Without the elite commissioning stones, the texts stop. That doesn't mean people vanish overnight, but the center of power dissolves. What about the forest? The jungle is not a passive actor but an agent of transformation. When humans quit the plaza, moss grows, roots break stone, vines creep inward. In a few centuries, the ruin looks like an accidental discovery, not an abandonment. The wilderness wins. Now, let's widen the lens. The collapse of the classic Maya is not the only example of a great society facing such a fate. The story resonates with the fall of the Minoans, the Indus Valley cities, the ancestral Pueblones. But the Maya story is especially vivid because the writings were still made, still nearby, still legible. The stones whisper, back to N. Archaeologists estimate the resident population peaked at perhaps 20,025,000 people, enough to sustain a city-state, plenty for temple building. Water management systems show canals, reservoirs, terraces. In short, it was a city of complexity. When we imagine it, we think of thousands of workers carving stone, of traders arriving by rivers, of elite feasts in the cold highlands above. And then we imagine the breakdown. Deforestation for fuel and construction leads to soil erosion. Terraces no longer function. Drought hits food production drops. Human stress rises. Disease may spread. Elite cannot deliver. People disperse. The city cannot hold. The final inscriptions are carved. The plaza is abandoned. In a moment we'll walk through the ruins of Copán. N in your mind. The hieroglyphic stairway, the platform of the cross, the temple 16, the ball court, the Acropolis still pointing to the sky. The jungle is creeping in. Birds call in the canopy overhead, the whisper of leaves, the heavy silence of centuries. One of the great mysteries is, what did the last inhabitants think? Did they plan to leave, or was it chaos and desperation? Did they attempt to hold on? Some evidence suggests construction and renovation up to the last moment, which may imply hope rather than surrender, a sign of optimism even as the crisis deepens. And what did the surrounding regions think? The northern cities continue for several centuries longer. Trade may shift northwards, but the great southern lowland heart is broken. The shift in trade, in power, in environment ripples outward. Today, when we walk these stones we are humbled. The legacy of the Maya is not merely their collapse but their genius. Architecture, astronomy, writing. They charted Venus, predicted eclipses, built temples aligned with solstices. Their city planners understood water flow and topography. Yet, they were still vulnerable. That is the paradox of greatness. You build mighty enough to last centuries, but you also build complexity that can make you fragile. The unseen collapse may come from within rather than from an exterior invader. For your audience now, imagine how the story of Copán N might mirror our own world. Global trade, climate stress, resource depletion, shifting political power. The past is not a museum piece, it is a mirror. And so we wander out of the plaza, leaving the carved stairway behind, listening to the distant call of the howler monkeys. The drip of tropical rain. The stones still hold memory. The jungle still reclaims. The story is incomplete. The last inscription carved but unsent. You leave the site. The air grows lighter. The canopy opens. You think, there was once a city here. It rose. It flourished. And it disappeared. Not in a blaze of war, but in the slow hush of nature and human change. As always, beneath the silence of stones lies a story, waiting for us to listen.